What is up, everybody? Welcome back here to the Devy YouTube channel. We're back with a Dynasty video. We're going to be looking at Dynasty stashes. So going through some players, I think 5 or 6 players here that we think that you should be stashing here at the end of your roster or heading into the offseason, guys that we think you could either get off your waiver wire or maybe a throw in a trade. We're going to give you player value. We're going to be looking at what their Dynasty value has fluctuated at and then actual real life trades that maybe you could get done in your leagues to kind of help you here. Only actual content on this channel, no clickbait, just trying to help you win your league. So hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll dive into the stashes on the other side of the intro. So the question is, what is a dynasty stash? And I think that is the first thing we have to kind of talk about. For me, when you're thinking of dynasty stashes, I'm looking for players that it could accumulate in value, right? So guys that can give us some type of value next season more than what they have, right? Now, some will say like Marvin Mims is a stash, like rookies that have not, panned out the way we wanted or disappointed. I'm not adding those guys on this one. This is going to be more for your deeper leagues and your deeper stashes, guys that are on rosters, but you can acquire like Trey Palmer here from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or guys that you can just pick up off waivers possibly when they get cut. So let's start with Trey Palmer. This is a fun one, I think, in terms of like, hey, a guy that has kind of had a role this year. So you see there, 29 catches, 249 yards, 2 touchdowns. Trey was an interesting prospect because he came into college at LSU as a 4 or 5-star recruit. Didn't really pan out. Went to Nebraska, had a pretty good year and a down year for Nebraska. And then, he's kind of solidified himself as a guy, right? Like he's doing some things out there that you like. I think when you look at stashes too, you're looking at opportunity. So does he have an opportunity coming up? I think that's a big question mark. Does Mike Evans come back? I think Mike Evans does come back. But if he doesn't, now you're going to open up a spot for Trey Palmer. And I think Trey Palmer's done enough to earn himself maybe that third guy, right? Raheem Jarrett is also there. Those other guys, in that offense. But I think Trey is right there. Like, I think Trey, to me, is a guy that you can kind of buy low on. You can grab him. If Evans moves, that perceived value bump is going to be there. You can see kind of where his dynasty value is trending right now. It's kind of down. So take advantage of it. As far as like where we have him ranked, so keep Trey cut, football guys, and here at the TDR. And then some trades that have happened for him. Trey Palmer for Bailey Zappi. Obviously, that's just a rebuilder that has Zappi. That's like, hey, you want a quarterback down the stretch? Here he is. I'll take Trey Palmer. I probably want a little bit more for Zappi. Give me a pick thrown in, right? Like if I'm going to add Trey Palmer, give me a pick that I can use, a 4th, 3rd, something like that I could still use. So you see that what they did with the Drew Lock deal. Trey Palmer and a 4th for Drew Lock. I love to have that pick just to have it, right? You can, if you're a rebuilding team or you're stashing it, just to use that pick on someone and kind of move them around. And then we have Trey Palmer, Sky Moore for Adam Thielen. Like, that's a good trade. If you're a rebuilding team or a kind of a retooling team, Adam Thielen doesn't seem to be like, he has no value almost, right? You're going to take 2 shots here. Sky Moore, that shot looks done, but who knows, right? Throw him in there. And then Trey Palmer, like the shot. So, like, you take it and you get 2 guys that maybe could increase in value. My next stash, a guy that I think that, you should have it on your radar, is Andre Iasovis from Cincinnati. Now, this is more of like, he has some games. He had the 3 catches, 14 yards. He has those 2 touchdowns where you're projecting that T. Higgins moves on, right? Which I think they'll get franchise him. But if he doesn't, you have him right there. And maybe if Tyler Boyd moves on, maybe he takes that role, right? I think the coaching staff likes Andre. I think that maybe he can find a role for him. He kind of reminds me of that athletic Puka Nacua, right? Like he does have those tendencies. So maybe they get him more involved in the offense. They just don't have they haven't, Andre hasn't had that ability to get in there, step in there, get a lot of reps right now. Not a lot of targets, not a lot of like receptions as you see there. But moving forward, maybe he does. Now, there is going to be for him, this is more of like a perceived bump, right? If he doesn't, if like they move on from Higgins, boom, his value goes up. You can kind of move him. Like, so this is a guy that maybe, just to be able to move as you go, as the offseason progresses, because he's going to gain value. That's kind of how I look at him. And then if he produces, great. But I wouldn't necessarily look at this as like a production move. It's more of a value move. Get him. Maybe they move on from Higgins. Then you can kind of shop him for a different asset. Now, as far as like where he's getting ranked, wide receiver 118, all outside the 110. mark there. Some deals that he's went for in Superflex leagues. Jimmy G, throwing in Jimmy G here, like just get Jimmy G off my roster. I'll take a shot on this kid. For a fourth is generally speaking where he's going. And then Rico Dowdle is a piece that I think is interesting in Dynasty as well. With the Cowboys flux with, Tony Pollard, what are they going to do there? You get Andre in a fourth. You rather take the wide receiver. I know a lot of people buy wide receivers in stashes. That's why you're going to see a lot of them on here as well. Just to show you, right? Maybe you want Rico Dowdle. Maybe you think he's going to take that role and he'll be a running back 2 on Dallas next year. And maybe they don't add a big significant piece. Now, I think they will go add a piece at the running back position, like a Derrick Henry type or Saquon or something like that. But if not, maybe Dowdle is there, right? Next guy, Xavier Gipson. Now, I talked about him in my Football Guys article like 7-8 weeks ago. I put him in one of my stash articles. For me, he's kind of gained some traction. You'll see a little bit there. You see his value go. It's the second highest it's ever been right now, according to Fantasy Calc. I think Xavier's found a role, right? And that's what you're looking for with these guys. Like, hey, can they find a role there? We've seen these Jets wide receivers really disappoint. And I think it's less about them and more about Zach Wilson, the quarterback play and all that. But also when you're thinking of like Gibson and what he's been able to do, like, I know that Aaron Rodgers likes him. I know that this coaching staff likes him. That's why they moved on from Mecole Hardman. So they've shown that, hey, he can get involved. He can get involved in the rushing. He's more of like a scat back, right? Like that term. Like, hey, he's kind of got that scat ability. He kind of can move around a little bit. They can be fluid with him. When you're thinking of like who they have on this team, based on their wide receiver position, like Randall Cobb's not really going to be there. These other guys that are there, like I think Xavier can find a role. Like I really do. Alan Lazard does not look good. I think with Aaron Rodgers coming back, Xavier's a guy that you should go try to target, because I do think that I don't want to say he reminds me of Jamison Crowder because that's a huge, lofty comparison. And I know it's the Jets, but he could find that role. Like, hey, just finds that role, earns targets. You're like, oh my gosh, this guy's a fun wide receiver 3 I can plug on my roster. Now, as far as like trades go and where he's ranked outside the top 100, so he's super stashed still. Easton Stick went straight after Easton Stick here for a fourth, and then Xavier Gibson, and Tyler Huntley for Cade Otton. That was not tight end premium. So, Tyler Huntley's a guy that we talked about on the Football Guys Dynasty show as well. Like, it's just someone that maybe stash, he might find a role out there, like a Geno Smith type role. I don't have that high of expectations there, but getting a quarterback in Superflex is never a bad option. But Cade Otton is a fine piece. Will he be anything more than a tight end 16, 17, 18? Probably not. He's probably in that range, so I don't mind buying a little bit on these guys. It's risk on both sides, to be honest with you, on this deal. But I like Xavier. I think he's a good stash. I think he's a fun stash. I think he finds a role. That's a guy to kind of keep an eye on. Next guy is Trey Tucker. So Trey Tucker from, I almost said Oklahoma, Oakland. And then it's not even right either. It's Las Vegas. You could tell I am out of it today out here in California. Receiving rise, 10 games this year. He's kind of found a role. 11 receptions, 220 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Big play kid, right? And you see those touchdowns come on. That's why his dynasty value is kind of shut up. But I think, again, when we think of stashes, will there be an expectation that he finds a role next year? New coaching staff more than likely coming in. Will Devontae Adams be there, right? What does this wide receiver room look like? Because this team's going to be completely different. So when we think of what the Raiders look like here, this is what is the risk. No, because I always talk to you guys, and I definitely talk about it on the Football Guys show. When the coaching staff comes in, you got to be very careful with some of these assets that are already on the roster, right? Like Trey Tucker's been fun. He's been fun this year, but will the next coaching staff really utilize him well, right? So if you buy him now, you're stash him now, you're really taking a shot that he's talented enough to find a role in the league no matter what that offense is, right? But I do think, if Devontae's not there, Jacoby's going to be there because of the contract. Hunter Renfrow is not there. Next year, possibly. They do have Michael Mayer, but Trey may have some opportunity. This team might not be very good next year. Again, bad teams can provide opportunity for these wide receivers, game script wise, those type of things. I think he's a fun guy to maybe add on your roster, and just see that value increase as it goes. Now, as far as some trades going on, now he is under 100 in terms of rankings too. Like, so he is finally like one of those guys that, people are keeping notice on. Like, he is definitely getting ranked there. He's going for 4th and the 3rd, essentially, depending on the league. And then Juwan Johnson. I think that's a fun little deal there. Juwan's Juwan. I mean, he kind of reminds me of Cade Otton a little bit. I'd probably want something else, though, added. Like, if I'm moving Juwan, for Trey Tucker, give me a fourth or third back. Give me some type of capital back. Yeah, that's a kind of a trend that you're going to listen for me. Just get something back there from him. Next guy, Jordan Mason. Now, this is one of those ones that, like, when we think of Jordan Mason as an asset, I think that he has more dynasty value from name because people have expected him to kind of break out, right? Like hey, he's looked good. Last year, he had 258 yards rushing. This year, 167. Like, hey, he's in San Francisco's offense. Like, these are those things where you add him. Like, you'll see that big bump that he happened there when I think CMC went down. If he stays there, right? If he's there, and because he's not getting a ton of snaps. I think against Arizona, he had 13 snaps or something like that. But if he stays there, if he stays in San Francisco and he's playing behind them, there's always a possibility of him getting the bump because of the offense, because CMC being out, and you're going to at least have him to kind of move if you need to, right? There were some deals going on. I saw Jordan Mason in one of my dynasty goes for a second when CMC was supposedly going to be hurt. So this is more of like you stash him because you expect that value there. As far as a runner goes, I do think that he fits what the NFL likes in running backs. And I think that he can find himself in a committee type back. The problem is you got to stay healthy. But we can't look at health and say, oh, he's not or he isn't. Like, that's not one of those things we do. We can't justify that. What I will say is if he is healthy, he could be a rotational back in a backfield. And so there is value to be had in running back position, but I do like him because he's on the Niners. Now, as far as like where he's at, he's getting ranked like in the 70s in terms of running backs where he's at there. Some deals that happen, obviously, for a quarterback needy team for Joe Flacco in a super flex league, probably someone going for it. This is the last they can get out of Joe Flacco before he as an asset. Jordan Mason in a second for Ty Chandler. I love Ty Chandler, especially with his role this last week. But would you like that second thrown in with Jordan Mason? I think that's an interesting deal. And then for a fourth straight up. So Mason's extremely cheap right now if he is on a dynasty roster out there, and he could be a fun little add-in that you get there. Now, last guy, Chris Brooks, kind of just talking about him. This is a more of an expectations. And again, what you tend to do, and what I think is kind of a trend now, follow the offenses, right? McDaniel's offense highlights running backs really well. When you're thinking of the running back room, it's getting a little older. Devon Chan, hasn't been able to stay completely healthy this season. So next year moving in, they like Chris Brooks. I think they do like what he can bring to the table. Always in Shanahan's offense, they always find guys like this. McDaniel's is going to be the same way. This is a guy that's probably on waivers, depending on your league and how deep it is. So this is one of those guys I think you could stash, and you could see that increased production next year. I think Chris Brooks is one of those guys that is a deep stash, but I love the offense that he's in. I love that his opportunity that he could have, and this is more of a next year play. So those are our Dynasty stashes. I hope it helps. I hope you guys are having a great end of the season here in Dynasty. We are here all year long talking Dynasty football. We're going to be diving into rookies really soon. We'll be doing mock drafts all year, especially on Monday, so check those out. Appreciate you guys. I'll check you guys next time.